Hello everyone, welcome all of you to Nikki Nile Presents with Industry Leaders, where today I'm joined by Lou Bones. So
guys,
I guess most of you know Lou already, but she's an illustration agent at Jelly London and previously managed the Association of Illustrators. And Lou has a real passion for nurturing talent in the industry and is ready to empower you all today with the info you need to move forward. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Lou. I saw a post you put on Instagram about being up for using some of your time to talk to some illustrators and give some advice. I thought straight away I need to get in touch with Lou, and so here we are today. So thank you. So first question I want to ask really is, what's the best way that illustrators should set the tone for their portfolios? Okay, so initial slide, is there a sort of first starting point of the first imagery they should have?
I think, and it's something that I kind of, having done all these portfolio consultations over the last couple of weeks and stuff as well, for illustrators, it's really hit home to constantly be looking at illustrators' portfolios and stuff. Again, was how a lot of illustrators really think about it just being like, and when I say portfolio, I think you should always think about your website and your social media, your Instagram, basically, as being your main two portfolios. And that a lot of them really thought about the projects individually and the posts individually, and not them as a whole unit. And I think what you've got to remember is, clients, coming from the client's point of view, they're really only going to be 5-10 seconds on your portfolio, whether it's your website or your social media. So setting the tone instantaneously and giving a rounded idea of who you are, what you can do for them, and kind of answer some of their questions already is really, really important to get across. I think if you've got like PDFs or whatever, that kind of side of things, I think it's maybe handy to have like one page at the very beginning that just outlines what areas of industry that you're working in, or, just literally, even if it's just your name and like, illustration, animation, editorial, children's books, whatever the ones that you're going for. And I would like, if you're a jack of all trades, just do the ones that you really want to be working in, I think it's important to keep it really, really simple and not have too many things out there, which I'll talk a little bit about later as well.
Yeah, okay. And one thing that I just wanted to add, guys, as well, is there is a little Q&A tab here. So if you do have any questions from things that we don't cover, feel free to ask away during the session and we'll get to them at the end. So, okay.
We'll probably dish out like 20 minutes or so at the end. So, and we do really want to really answer any of your questions. So while we're talking, pop them in there and we'll get to them at the end. Also, obviously we're doing this for you guys, but this is a wider discussion that everyone's kind of interested in. I think a lot of people are taking this moment to reassess their portfolio. It's why I've been doing some of the portfolio consultations and stuff. So if there's any kind of nuggets of knowledge that you want to throw out there to the rest of the world, please put it up on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and tag the two of us.
Yeah,
you guys know our handles or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be great. So should illustrators put a specific like design to their portfolios, or should the layout be very clean and allow the illustrations to do the talking?
I think it's something, again, I've noticed recently, having kind of gone back into looking at portfolios all the time. It's really important to keep it clean and clear. Again, when you really think about the time frame that someone has looking at your work from a client's perspective, I think illustrators, and particularly when you come out of school, or like when I'm in uni, or if you're kind of, I'd spoken to a lot of illustrators that come from a graphic design background and are kind of making the moves to be full-time illustration. And there's, if you come from a graphic design background, you have to be a jack of all trades, and the clients dictate your style, and you kind of have to have lots of skills in your repertoire. And, I think particularly coming out of school and stuff like that as well, you want to show all the stuff that you can do in case there might be someone who likes that one project. Whereas, it's really important as a professional illustrator to strip all of that back and really only have the things that are in your portfolio need to be the things that you want to get employed for, and specifically those things. So also with the time frames in terms of people contacting you, looking at your work, they really don't have a lot of time to click through loads of stuff or read lots of information. So the more tabs that you have, the more searching that they have to do to find the jobs that they need. I think thinking about it like you think about, like that you should think about your Instagram, it's a scroll up and down, and that's they're just getting the information from that scroll up and down, is seeing exactly who you are, what areas of industry you're working in, and what you can kind of do for them. It needs to be very clear just from that, rather than them being like, oh, I need to go into the menu and then I need to drop down here. Oh, and they do like 8 different kinds of stuff. Oh, which one is which? Do you know what I mean? And it's all kind of mishmashed, or having landing pages, or, you know, big spiels about each project or whatever. I think it's really important to kind of strip all of that back. And it should just be really clear on the first page or from the first kind of scroll exactly what you can do, who you are as an artist. So one strong overall kind of style, and what areas you're working in, what kind of projects you're looking at.
Yeah, it's the same for graphic design, actually. I think when certain designers think, I'm going to overly design my portfolio, and they put all this like crazy graphics around the border, and it's like, no, just let your work speak for itself. If anything, make it clutter free, so when people are going through your portfolio, they can see your work that you produce. So and should illustration portfolios feature written descriptions about each project and who it was for, and the thought process behind the work as well?
I think it's definitely important, and maybe I'll talk about it a little bit later, but even if you're putting up like personal work, personal, you know, commissioner-led personal pieces and that kind of stuff, which is really important, I think don't say when stuff is personal, just say what area of industry. If it's a piece that could be for editorial, put it in editorial. If it's some packaging stuff that you've mocked up or whatever, it's just packaging design, you know, that kind of way. You don't need to you know, say that it's personal or anything like that. If it's editorial, or it could be editorial, it's a personal piece, but it could be editorial, just put the concept, you know, as in like a, you know, not a huge, you know, explanation of the concept, but just literally, you know, this is the rise of slavery in Southeast Asia or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? That's a concept. I think, you know, if you kind of have your projects and you've got maybe 5 assets per project, and you click into it and then it opens up and there's a little bit more information. Realistically, I don't think you need to give too much information. Who the client was, maybe who the art director was. That's always quite nice. Particularly on Instagram, it's always good to tag them. Just means that you can get out there. It shows who you're working with, and that kind of thing as well. I think on Instagram it's kind of nicer because you could just do a really quick one and say thanks to whoever the art director was, and you know, if it's uncommissioned pieces and it's just like, you know, stuff that you want to get into your portfolio so that you get more work in that area, then just a brief description of what it is, what area of industry that it's for, just some packaging design for whatever. Even our illustrators and animators at Jelly do loads of amazing personal projects, and that as well. And there's always kind of a like, oh, do I write, you know, why I chose to do this project? Or I think when you're in uni, you're kind of conditioned to explain everything, and there's so much written stuff that you have to put with your work to justify it, and then sometimes the work can maybe not speak for itself, so you have to do the written bit to justify it. And I think nowadays it's so image based that your work should really speak for itself. And when you are doing concepts, and even if you are doing personal work, it needs to be clear what the brief was for that personal work. You know, it shouldn't just be random kind of bits or whatever. So I think definitely a little bit of text, but just enough to get across who the client was or what area of industry it was for, and that's it. Obviously, if you've got, you know, bigger things that you want to say, you can add that on Instagram or something like that. But I'd kind of keep it off your website too much. People just don't have the time to read it. Do you know what I mean? The time for kind of blogs and that kind of stuff is gone now. And clients will really, your number one is going to be your Instagram rather than your website anyway.
Okay, I think that's an interesting point that you said about giving correct kudos to like art directors, and I always say this with like graphic designers is you might be your portfolio might be in front of somebody that worked on that project with you, and if you're almost hinting that you manage the entire thing yourself and you're not crediting people, they'll say, hang on a minute, I've worked on that with them, and it's where everybody's trying to get appropriate credit for their work to get more work. It makes sense, everyone has each other's backs and tags each other, etc.
Particularly with art directors, you know, and creatives that you work with, whether, you know, regardless of what area of industry it is, it's not an us and them. You're integral parts of exactly the same industry, and you're as integral as each other. And I think there is a little bit of us and them, you know, sometimes with illustrators where they don't really see that side of it, or, you know, don't really understand that side. And I think it's really important to understand that that is their work. They commissioned you, they sought you out. Also, they'll, you know, they'll take you where, you know, if you get on well with them, they'll take you wherever they go, you know, if they move agencies or they move companies or whatever. So it's handy just to be like, yeah, like I loved working with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's obviously, if you didn't like working with them, that's a different thing. But, you know, it's always handy to put those things in and, you know, keep everyone sweet. And, you know, it is a collaboration. It isn't just you doing it all by yourself. There is many cogs to each job.
Mm. And should illustrators have different portfolios for different sectors or bookings that they're going after?
I get asked this quite a lot. And I think, again, it usually comes from people who have that graphic design background and are in the limbo period where they're like, I want to be an illustrator, but you know, and they've still got the money coming in from graphic design, but they want to move and take the leap. Also, sometimes from people who maybe come from the children's book background, but also maybe do some other stuff, or, you know, commercial illustrators who want to maybe do some children's stuff. So, you know, obviously your style might change a little bit if you're doing more children's stuff into a slightly more naive maybe style or delivery or whatever like that. I think it's important to pick which areas of industry you kind of really want to work in. I think, again, like what we were talking about, having too much stuff under your belt when there's loads of different tabs and all that kind of thing. I would, when it comes from graphic design, I think a lot of people kind of that come from a graphic design background but are illustrators have this idea that you either call yourself like one or the other, and the two worlds are actually quite separate. Whereas when I look at the work, I'm like, you are an illustrator, you're clearly doing illustrated work, but you have the added skill set of knowing graphic design, understanding layout, understanding typography, understanding fonts, understanding how those things interact with your illustration work. And while, you know, I always kind of say, drop the graphic design side of it, drop that as a tagline. You know, if I'm looking for an illustrator, I want to see that you're an illustrator. I want you to own being an illustrator. So, you know, if it says I'm a graphic designer and an image maker and you know, all these things, I'm like, that person doesn't know who they are. Just call yourself an illustrator. And then use your skill set as a graphic designer within your illustration work. So when you're making new, you know, someone who comes from a graphic design background, you can do the best packaging is amazing usually, you know, any of those kind of like menus, anything that needs to be laid out, anything that needs typography in it, and you can start to kind of see how your work works well next to it, and you have this upper hand that a lot of illustrators don't have, where they really understand those two combinations of things and how their work will sit into a commercial setting, rather than just putting illustrations out there and being like, oh, this is an illustration and I did the label. But, you know, someone who's done graphic design can probably do the label a little bit better and maybe, you know, figure out how to make it look a little bit more like a real label, or those kind of things. So I think there's definitely, I think when you're coming from the graphic design background, just own the illustration thing and see the graphic design as a huge skill set that you have, that you can showcase with your illustration work through commercial projects and through commercially led or commissioner led personal projects. I think when you have other areas, you should have one unified style across your work, regardless of if you are working in different areas. I think, you know, changing medium will automatically change your style a little bit, just because the delivery is slightly different, but it won't change it so much, or shouldn't change it so much, that you actually look like two different illustrators. And I think there is, you know, from seeing some of the portfolios that I've seen recently, in that you do have to edit yourself, I think. And I think sometimes, again, it's that jack of all trades. You're trying to do a little bit of everything for everybody all the time. And I think maybe having a good hard think about, you know, if there was one industry that you really wanted to work in for the rest of your life, or maybe you're not getting work in that area just yet, you know, is it doing me any favors to have all this other shit in my portfolio? Is it, you know, should I have sketchy stuff there? Should I have cartoons in there? Should I have, you know, this kind of thing? Because it just doesn't sing. You're only keeping it in there because you think there's going to be one job that someone comes around, rather than thinking about your career longevity, and the ownership of your brand. So I think the more diluted you come across, you know, the more tabs you have, the more styles you have, the more of this, the less like an illustrator, and the more, you know, you're kind of diluting, and I think really risking the longevity of your career. If you think about any of the big illustrators at the moment, or even just the legends of the past or whatever, you know, the idea is you want someone to say, oh, that's so-and-so, and be instantaneously recognizable, and you know what areas of industry that person works in, you know. And I think particularly when you're starting out, that is difficult, because you just need to get the money in, and you need to get the jobs in, and that. So I think stripping it back as much as possible, really focusing in on 2 or 3 areas, like editorial and advertising, or editorial and children's books, or packaging and and advertising, you know, those kind of things. And I would see, if you do animation, I wouldn't see that that's not a separate area of industry. It's illustration and animation. I'm an illustration and animation agent, and, you know, animation is across all of those industries as well. So I wouldn't have you know, you can have a separate section for just all your animations, but I would very much have your animation and that throughout your portfolio, regardless of what areas it's catering to.
Okay. I think that's quite, it's interesting for me to hear it from an illustration point of view, because I come across loads of graphic designers that either aspire to be illustrators, or they have really strong illustration styles. And like you say, in packaging, normally as a graphic designer, when you approach a project, there'll be lots of hand sketching and loads of illustrative work to go on pack anyway. But then it's, I guess, creators deciding, are they an illustrator? And that's very, very different to a graphic designer, although they can overlap a little bit every now and then. But so going back to portfolios, should illustrators show like all of their work, or should like a mini sample or like a little taster of their work be sent out?
I think if you're talking about send outs in particular, I think, just definitely a little taster. And I think it's really important when you're doing the send outs, like, you know, we could do a totally different conversation on getting new business and how, you know, maybe we will, on that side of things. But when it comes to really putting your work out there, sending stuff out to people, trying to get meetings or phone calls or whatever, it's really, really important to research who you're talking to, research what that agency, and when I say agency, I mean ad agency, or who that art director, you know, what is the work that they are doing? What does that look like? Does your work fit in there? Do you have any business contacting that person at all? Or are you just firing shots into the wind? Do you know what I mean? I think it's really important for illustrators and all creatives now, particularly in this moment, and maybe to be using this moment to do their research, so we can hit the ground running when the advertising machine cogs start rolling again properly. That you do lots of research into who these people are and trying to find the contacts. So, you know, if there's brands you want to work for, you know, if there's areas of industry that you're really interested in, like say all your stuff is food orientated or whatever it is, that you figure out, you know, who would be my favorite clients that I would love to work for? Is it McVitie's, or is it, you know, Cadbury's or whatever? Or even just kind of like, I like chocolate, I do a lot of stuff with that, or and then figuring out what ad agencies have got those guys and are doing those campaigns for them. And then you can start to try and figure out who the art directors are in there that might be good to throw your work out to. I think it's important to just, like, rather than blanket bombing everybody with the same shit, to really make sure that, you know, you have a contact list of, these guys are all editorial and they're editorial in this kind of sector, so I'm going to send them this body of work, and you just send them editorial stuff. You know, maybe an editorial stuff could be a bit more concept driven, it can be a bit more abstract and surreal, and that which doesn't maybe work for a lot of other areas in illustration. So, you know, bulk of all those people and just send a little selection. And I would really only keep it to maybe 4 images or something like that. If you're writing emails to people, and I see this all the time, make sure all your links work. Like, really go over and make sure everything, rather than just being like, here's my email or here's my website, and just write your email, make sure it links in. I just want to click it and go straight to your website. I want to click it and go straight to your Instagram. Always put your Instagram all in there as well, because 9 times out of 10 your Instagram is going to be more up to date than your website, you know. Do try and keep them both up to date as much as possible, but I know the website can get lost in there. And then you know, have a PDF attached. Make sure the PDF isn't 10 million megabytes. Like, literally, a lot of the agencies will have a real cap. The ad agencies will have a cap on how much you can send to them in one email anyway. So I would try and just get a PDF with 4 images on it, links through to your proper website or whatever, and make sure that those 4 images are geared towards, or 4 projects or whatever it is that you want to show them, are geared specifically towards that person and what they, you know, when you find that person, they're all on Instagram and Twitter, you know, you can look and see what kind of stuff that they are actually commissioning, to see whether you fill a gap or you are in line with what they're already commissioning, you know. So I think, yeah, important to keep it stripped back and very focused. So I think researching, and then you can have another group of contacts that will be for different area of your portfolio that you can really hone in, that these guys are all going to be advertising, or maybe, you know, you're looking for a literary agent or that kind of stuff. You need to, you know, make sure that you're sending people the right stuff. But there'd be no point sending, you know, if you've got some children's book stuff, there's no point sending that to an ad agency at all, you know. So okay. Definitely research.
So what does work best in the industry, like online portfolios or websites or PDFs?
I mean, for illustrators, it's Instagram right now. It really is Instagram. And I think that's why, again, going back to the research side of it, so many illustrators would just, you know, just having a cool Instagram and having cool images is just not enough. Like, you have to think about the longevity of your career. You have to think about, like, even Jelly as an agency, like the amount, like me, I'm all new business. It's all constantly getting out there, as many contacts, building up relationships with people. That's all it is to ensure the longevity of your career. And I think, you know, having one nice project that you put up on your website or your social media and being like, oh, why aren't the jobs rolling in? You know, it's really, really important to make sure that you are actually contacting people, that you're really engaging with. It's nice on Instagram to get fans. It's great to have fans. When you look at most illustrators who have huge numbers of followers and stuff on Instagram, they're fans of their work, but it's not about, fans, you know, don't really bring you in the work. It's more about making connections with people in industry. And again, like I said, those people will take you wherever they go, or if it works well for you. I think it's important to, you know, engage with all of, and really research who all those art directors are, who the creatives are. There's little creative duos all the time. One will be the creative person, one will be the copywriter. You know, get in with people who have the same humor as you, who work in the same areas of you. And that kind of stuff, so they get to know your work, like follow their work, you know, give them props for their stuff. I definitely have found, in terms of just engaging with those kind of people. Twitter's definitely more interesting at the moment, and has been probably for the last year. Obviously, Instagram's very good for the visual, for you to get your stuff, your work, like visually straight in front of people, but for you to kind of see how industry is working and see how industry is reacting to things, and how to change your portfolio to react to things, or maybe pick up on stuff that's out there. I think Twitter is very good, and you can have those conversations with people. You can chime in on stuff and actually talk to people, rather than just being like, I hope they see my stuff. You can get in there, get in that conversation. So I think Instagram is definitely the number one for now. And I think also, I have to say this as well, particularly while we're having this moment where I'd say a lot of people are feeling the mental health issues, it's really important as an illustrator that you see Instagram as a business tool. And when you look at other people's work, you should be looking at not the work itself, but who commissioned it, who's the art director that commissioned it, who is the company that job was for. Because you're obviously, if you like the work, they're commissioning great illustration work. That's what you want to be seeing, rather than, oh my God, this project's so amazing and my work's so shit, and I could never do a job like this. That's not where you think about it. Really try and put the blinkers on and just use Instagram as a business tool. I think we'll talk a little bit more about social media and stuff later on. I think unfortunately, the physical portfolios, I mean, we still have them at Jelly. I bring all the portfolios around a lot of the illustration agencies would do to bring them around the ad agencies and that. So I think physical portfolios, and actually seeing some, like, that's why when I go around all the agencies, rather than doing a digital presentation or that, it is great to get the work in front of them so they can actually see a whole book that's Mary Lou Fair or someone's work, and really get into it. So I think actually having a book of your work is handy to have if you are going around anywhere, or just to kind of get stuff off screen. It's so much screen time these days. However, we are in a moment now where that face-to-face thing would be very limited for illustrators anyway, because your clients are so international and they're all over the place. It's not as much as a graphic design, where I feel like there's more likely to have actual face-to-face meetings and stuff. But obviously we're in this moment now where face-to-face, probably won't be getting back into business for quite some time. So again, I think the focus now should be your portfolio, as in your website and your social media, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. What about LinkedIn? So Instagram's number one, and Twitter. LinkedIn a good platform to use to connect?
Yeah. So in LinkedIn is great for snooping, and it's great for all that research, because all the art directors, all those creatives, everyone you want to commission you, literally every single person you want to commission you is there. And it's, again, when I was saying kind of like, the brands that you want to work for, find out the agency who's doing their advertising work. You can go, all the agencies, all the ad agencies, and other companies as well, like all the, editorials, all the publishers, all of those guys are all on LinkedIn as a company. And then it will tell you who the employees are. And then you can filter the employees to art director, art editor, creative, whatever. So you can see those people there. I wouldn't be hounding them or trying to add thousands of them or anything like that. I think that's, maybe a bit obsessive, but or oppressive, I don't know, for them on the other side. But it's great to know who those people are, their names are, and then you can kind of put two and two together and get their email address. I think trying to get an email rather than hassling people over LinkedIn. I mean, you can do it the odd time or whatever, but I think it's better to just try and actually get their name, and then you can kind of piece together what their email address is and send them your portfolio that way and get in contact with them that way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. I think LinkedIn is quite an interesting one, but also nothing beats that chat on Twitter when you're tweeting and sharing something as well, and also Instagram. So how would an illustrator grab the attention of someone like yourself, like an agent? What do you look for?
I think it's really important to say that you don't need an agent at all as an illustrator to have a career or have a successful career. And I have to say that there's a lot of shit agencies out there. There's a lot of scams out there, and there's a lot of people that will just sign up shitloads of illustrators and will only get you one job a year, and will only, that's all they want. They just want to get their percentage or whatever, and are not nurturing you. That's why I love working at Jelly, and that is, it's a very nurturing thing. It's, you know, it's a two-way amazing journey that you should go on. They should really give a shit about where you want to go and what you want to do. I will say the best agencies probably know who they want already. So, you know, like when I said that I should do these portfolio consultations, literally every single person, I've asked them to kind of send me in 3 questions that they want to talk about, and everyone's like, how do I get an agent? Don't be thinking about an agent. An agent, you need to be making money to even think about you, you know, because most agencies will take on people that are kind of, you know, early or mid-career. And I think that's when it really benefits someone, is when you're already good and you just want to be better. And then, you know, you're already bringing in work, but you just want to step it up a bit and maybe get those, you know, top clients or whatever it is. I think the main thing for illustrators is focus on your portfolio. You cannot get employed for stuff that's not in your portfolio right now. And because of the uncertainty between Brexit and the election and stuff last year, you really have to spoon feed people anymore. It can't be just cool illustrations. It has to be work in context. It has to be that kind of thing. So, you know, for us at Jelly, we obviously have our futures program, which is like where we take young people kind of coming into the industry or just out of uni or whatever, and we kind of really nurture them for maybe 1 or 2 years. But I think it's really important. You need to be getting that work in already for an agency to really kind of look at you properly, or kind of see the spark there. I would focus on getting the portfolio, the work in, and getting those kind of jobs. Also, it's really important for you not to get scammed by agents. So you need to know what an agent does. You need to know how to price your work. You need to know how to read a contract. You need to not be fucking yourself over already, you know, because we'll kind of feel that already, that you're not doing yourself any favors. And, you know, maybe keep you on the back burner or whatever. But I'd say most agencies, good agency, will have its own tone of voice, not thousands of illustrators. I would be careful if you're editorial based and have a real love of editorial, where most of your portfolio would be editorial and you really want to stay in editorial. The money around editorial jobs is so little that I feel personally is a bit of a shame to have an agent. If you're getting the work in editorial, I think, you know, giving, you know, if you have basically an agent will take between 25 and 35%, and different agencies differ depending on what that is, depending what the terms of the agreement is or whatever. But even 25% of 400 quid is still quite a lot for your one illustration job. And I think, again, if you have the, you know, I think when you are choosing an agency or whatever, make sure that they are actually doing new business and not just waiting for you to bring in jobs. Like all day, every day, all the agents at Jelly and all the EPs and that are constantly out, constantly in with art directors, other producers, in the ad agencies, in meeting those people, making those connections, building up those relationships. So you need to kind of make sure that your agency is doing that as well, rather than just kind of getting you because you're getting some jobs in. I don't think you need an agent as an illustrator to make it. I don't think it's a necessity. I think it's something that people really think about, but do your research, make sure there's a really nice strong tone of voice underneath, and not too many illustrators, because usually there won't be that many agents. So you want to make sure that you're going to get some time with the agents and get someone to guide you in that.
Do you know that's the same in graphic design recruitment, actually, where there's certain agencies out there that just aren't the best, and the minute you realise somebody's registered with them, you're like, Oh
Yeah,
God,
yeah,
like
happens all the time. I'm like,
everywhere in the industry. They may not even be working with those clients or have a relationship with those clients, but they'll be like, oh my God, we've got a portfolio here. It's going to open so many doors. Let's just send them everywhere. And when I hear of people being represented by good recruiters, I'm like, oh, you know, so and so, they're good.
yeah.
They work with those clients, etc. So yeah, who's representing you seems to be important in both illustration and graphic design, actually.
Yeah. It needs to
Overall,
be a symbiotic relationship, you know. It's not, you're not working for them and they're not working for you. It's a journey you're both on in the same way. And I think, again, there's always kind of illustrators, and then the agents are there, and then the clients and the art directors are there, and illustrators need to get that out of their mindset. You are one symbiotic thing. You should be working cohesively together, and you should have the same, you should understand that these things are a collaboration. And if the people that you're working with aren't into that or don't see it like that, then maybe they're not the kind of people you want to be working with.
yeah. A few more questions I want to whiz through, because time flies when you're
Does fly, yeah. But I'm okay if you're okay.
Yeah, I'm good for time. So what would you say are great big portfolio no-nos?
Having no brand. If it's really not clear who you are or what area of industry, like, you need to have one style. If you've got loads of different styles going down there as an illustrator, that needs to be your main kind of point. It's this building up that brand with one style. One big no-nos, really shit layout, website that doesn't work, clicks, or it takes ages to load. Again, it's all about like the ease of information. I just want to look at that pictures in my face quickly, you know. So, you know, if you've got animations or long, you know, when you upload stuff to your website, make sure that they're not like, you know, thousands of megabits or that kind of thing, that they're ready for web so that they don't take ages to load. Again, loads of text. I don't want to be reading loads of shit. Just don't have the time. I'm not employing you to write for me. I just want, you know, I want to see your illustrations. I think also I see a lot of illustrations where it's just nice illustrations all the time. There's no work in context. And I think that's a huge one now for illustrators. You got to show work in context. I got to see what areas you're working in, rather than just being like, yeah, nice pictures. You know, there's loads of people. You know, I would say kind of keep your sketchbooks and that kind of stuff off your website. You know, it might be nice to have one tab where you've got all your kind of sketchbooks. If you do loads of sketchbook stuff, just remember it can always look a bit studenty. And if you are doing sketch stuff, or you have your artistic, like fine art images on there, make sure they're finished. Don't put any mark making or you know, experiments, or, you know, off one whole page with a tiny little thing on it. I would kind of keep that to your, well, also throw that over to your Instagram as well. Like, if you're going to put up sketches or any work in progress or anything like that, like, well, work in progress videos and that kind of thing should be on your Instagram, but not too many of them. And I think just making sure that your portfolio looks premium all the time. And I think when you put up sketch work or those kind of things that aren't commercially focused, it can really, you're only as good as your weakest link. So the minute you put up something shit, the rest of your portfolio goes down. So I think really editing yourself is important, and not putting too much stuff up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important point you make about you lacking with time. I'm exactly the same. Every client's the same. And one thing I always say is, don't make me work to get you work. Like, make it super
exactly
easy, straightforward. The minute that you've got my attention, I'm on my screen, I'm like, who is so and so? What are they about? That website's not work. Okay, how do I see on Instagram? Oh, that's, you know, you need to make it flow. And anything that goes out the door that's got your name attached to it, and you just don't want to fall at the first hurdle. You really don't. You want there to be all your info there, and that it flows. And also things like contact details. I know that's a no-brainer, but some people just have like mobile numbers or emails, like just have it there so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, no contact forms. Don't put a contact form. I want to feel like I'm contacting you and not a robot. A lot of illustrators put contact forms on there, and, you know, obviously if contact forms were made by big business to deter their customers from contacting them. So you know, and have your email address, you know, if you're starting out, you know, have your email address on the info bit of your Instagram as well. Obviously, if you've got loads of contacts and loads of work coming in, then you can probably take it off. But I think trying to make sure that it's really clean, clear and simple about who you are, what you can do and how to contact you is really important. Get all your social media up on your website and that as well. Yeah, and a little about you is quite cute. You know what I mean? Just not like pages and pages and pages of it. Just a little like, here I am. This is what I do. Something funny, something, you know, personable. Get in touch, whatever.
No, I'm glad you mentioned about contact forms because that's one of my headaches.
Oh, I fucking hate them.
You're like, I want to, you know, what? I've got to input my details. I just want to get
Yeah.
hold of you for something. But also touching on animation. So you mentioned that earlier. Are they expected these days to be good at animation? And if so, what software should they use?
I think illustration, like obviously with Jelly, we have an illustration roster, we've got an animation roster, and then we also have an in-house animation team because we're a production studio. So, and I'm like a big sucker for animation. So I'm always kind of like, but I think if you just think about it from a client's point of view, and even if it's just your website and your social media, if you're thinking about it from a client's point of view, like to really have, you know, longevity as an illustrator, or, you know, and kind of get some of those bigger jobs in, and some of those bigger jobs, you know, a lot of the time they will involve some sort of animation now, or if you can offer the animation, they will say that they want it, or that kind of thing. So if you can plant the seed that your work be animated, even if you can't animate, even if you can just create GIFs, and I mean, just have some colors change in the background or have something move, you're just planting the seed that your work works well animated. And then it's up to them whether they get an animation production studio to animate your work and you provide the backgrounds or the toolkits or whatever it is. But you're just sowing the seed that there's a bit extra that your work can offer, and there's a skill set there that you have. I think as an illustrator, you should always be pushing the boundaries of the kind of work that you're doing. I think you should definitely try and do some animation. And even if it's just GIFs, I'm not talking about long format, you know, narrative stuff. If you want to go down that route, absolutely go for it. But then, you know, I would think about doing that properly rather than, you know, that's kind of stuff you want to spend some proper time to really get into that. It takes a while. I think just from showing a client point of view, like, you know, I want to see a client, it's handy to see how your work interacts with text. It's handy because your work will be next to text. It will have to interact with text, or maybe you've got some hand lettering you want to throw in there because, again, I might need some words in with the illustration. So if you could do the words as well as the illustration, that would be great. It's just showing people other skill sets and just planting the seed in their head that your work works well with this stuff, or could be this other thing that you can kind of throw up to them. I think if you're doing GIFs and stuff like that, like most people I know have taught themselves how to do GIFs just using Photoshop. There's a couple of really nice YouTube tutorials, and it's really not that difficult just to get by. And I think if you try it out, you'd be like, fucking hell, that's so cool. And if it's just, you know, even when you're doing your personal stuff to get into your portfolio, to get more commercial work, you know, if you can animate one asset that you've done, or even previous assets that you've already made, just to make your whole website, you know, have some stuff that's moving. It's just instantaneously more interesting. It's instant. I want to hang on it a bit longer. I don't feel like you need to put the pressure of, you know, learning properly how to animate. So Photoshop and that, I think, is pretty easy for beginning how to do GIFs. And there's loads of great YouTube tutorials. Then you can get into kind of After Effects. And then, you know, if you're going proper animation, you're into Cinema 4D and all the rest of it. But that's, you're an animator if that's, you know, you're branching into a different not a different realm. You know, another thing that will really take up some time if you're really just looking for something to make your website pop or your Instagram pop. Also, I think it's quite fun just to see your shit move. Do you know what I mean? I think it's handy. If I was an illustrator, I would definitely be doing some GIFs and that as well. And I would, you know, I'd just leave it there, probably.
Okay, so my last question for you, Lou, and then we'll move on to the Q&A, is
Yeah.
What are your 5 main top tips for illustrators when it comes to crafting their portfolios?
So I think number one for me with the portfolio is definitely building your brand. I know creatives and particularly artists are like, brand, I hate that word brand, I'm an artist. And it's like, well, you know, you're a freelance, you know, you have your own business. So you do have a brand, you are your own business. So you absolutely have to build your brand. Clients and art directors and that kind of stuff, they want to buy into your brand. And so I think it's really important to build up, you know, maybe choosing color palette and that kind of stuff, having one strong singular style, really, really clear voice about who you are, what you want to do. And, you know, when you're on your Instagram, you can build your brand really nicely. You can add humor in there. It doesn't have to be finished projects. It doesn't have to be commissioned work all the time. You can put some nice, you know, work in progress time lapses in there. You know, depending on who the kind of clients are, you can build, you know, lifestyle. You can start to build stuff that's more around the kind of person that you are, that you want clients to buy into. You know, you think about taking it off the 2D screen and into 3-dimensional objects. Think about furniture, think about ceramics, think about prints, think about all those other things that you can put your work on in your own time, that builds your brand, and all of that elevates your work and makes it look super premium. My second thing would be showing work in context. Definitely something that we've had to change a little bit in the last year or so, in response to just the uncertainty and clients being more uncertain than ever because of Brexit, because of market changes, and because of political whatever. You just have to spoon feed people a little bit more. So just showing them a nice image doesn't really have the same effect of showing them a nice image and then showing them in context, or the other way around, or showing it moving, or, you know, actually, if you have the editorial stuff, like show it in magazine, if you have the packaging, and also try and hassle, you know, and get it in your contracts that you actually get samples of the stuff that you are putting your work onto. If, you know, if you're doing products or anything like that, or if they're making videos or anything, make sure that you get those samples and try and get that in your contract. It's hard enough to get the stuff off them if you're like, can I have one of those? And you never get it. So definitely showing work in context. Just be really, really clear about who, where, what areas of industry that you want to work in. So again, that becomes clearer, that kind of links to showing work in context. Then I can see, you know, I think it's very clear when editorial stuff is, because editorials is more concept driven. I can usually tell when a piece is editorial, but showing it in context as well, showing it actually in the magazine, just makes it look more premium. You know, showing your range of packaging, showing your ads out in the wilderness, you know, if they're on roll-ups or they're on, and even, you know, you can put all this in terms of, they don't need to be commissioned pieces. You should be making these projects, your personal projects, look like commissioned projects anyway, by mocking them up and that kind of stuff. Showing your murals in situ, you know, all of those things, really, really important now these days. Just keeping it really clean and simple, less tabs, less text, more images, you know, it should sing. And then my last little bit, add a little bit of animation if you can. It's not a huge thing. Do you know what I mean? If there's areas of industry that don't need animation, do you know what I mean? That's absolutely fine. It's not a huge pressure to put on yourself. I always just think to show your work across as many mediums as possible is interesting for you, keeps it fun for the clients. It's just extra shit that you can throw at people, being like, well, I could do that as well, or I could do this, and then obviously you get paid for all those extras. Or what's the worst they can say? Oh no, we don't need that, or we don't want it, or whatever. But just always nice to keep yourself interested and move your skill set along as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to whiz through some of the Q&A questions. Are there any that stand out to you at the moment? So one question is it okay to illustrate for an editorial piece as personal work and have the magazine and the article in the explanation? Or could this be illegal to say, as I'm not the original artist that got commissioned for it?
If you're creating some new editorial work by creating a piece based on an article, then I would, that already exists. I wouldn't tag the the agency. I wouldn't tag the company or the artist or anything like that. What I would put it under is just editorial work and the concept of that article, and leave all the other bits off. It's something that I set like illustrators to do all the time. It's a really easy editorial brief to get a load of new editorial work in your portfolio really quickly, is to just pick a load of articles from, say, The Guardian or the Financial Times or somewhere, and do one concept driven illustration for it. I think be careful of stuff that's already got illustrations around it, because you will inevitably be influenced by that illustration in some way. So I think picking stuff that doesn't have illustrations attached to it is a much better option. But it's a really easy way to do. Pick 3 out of The Guardian, 3 out of the Financial Times. Sometimes I would try and pick stuff that maybe doesn't mean that much to you. I think there's a lot of stuff around editorial stuff at the moment where illustrators, you know, if it's about rights or social political issues and stuff that you really give a shit about, sometimes there's too much that illustrators need to say within the images, and the images can come across very on the nose, you know, like a hairy leg doth not maketh feminism, and you know, that kind of stuff where it's like, yeah, there's so much we need to say, and it's like the image ends up being quite naive and childish and lacking. So I think pick ones that are a bit more in depth than that. Pick ones that they really, you know, like the Financial Times, also trade magazines and that kind of stuff, much more interesting. Things that are science, environmental, medical based, really, really interesting possibilities for illustrations there to get in your portfolio. So yeah, I wouldn't tag anyone that it's come out of or anything like that. Just put the concept to the editorial, because you're not aiming it at that client. You are aiming it at all the clients within editorial. I think that's what you want to get clear. If you want to work for Nike, you don't put a project up that's got loads of ticks on it or tag Nike in all your projects. You do a load of projects that are aimed at high-end sportswear. You know, they're dynamic images that contain shoes, that contain running, that contain empowerment and movement. That's what you get across, so that you're aiming it at those clients. Again, if you just narrow it down to one person, you'll A, annoy them, and B, you know, one of those clients isn't going to make your career. You need to be getting all of those clients in that industry.
Yeah. And so moving on to another question. So I use digital collage technique. I currently call myself an Illustrator graphic image maker. If I scrap the graphic image maker title, will it mislead people into thinking that my work is drawn?
No, I think you should be very clear whether your work is drawn or not. Also, I don't think people give a shit whether, you know, what medium you're using. They're going by your image. Like we've got James Daw on our roster, and he's you know, collage digital, and he's analog a lot of the time as well, where he makes up you know, collages in that way. You know, I would just call yourself an illustrator, and you know, your work should just speak for itself. I don't think you need to be giving yourself titles or, you know, explaining it too much. I think you can kind of muddy the water, and again, people don't massively care. They just care about the actual asset outcome rather than the way that you did it too much these days.
Okay. And any advice for people who'd like to have a job in creative industry, so an agency, etc., alongside being a freelance illustrator?
I would recommend that you choose one or the other. I think illustrators don't make the best agency people. I think you really, you know, there's a reason that I'm not an illustrator. Do you know what I mean? And I would never be an illustrator, because illustrators are really, really good at that. And I'm really good at my job. And they are specifically not very business-minded creative people in general. That's the same. Nikki, you're the same. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason why I have this job, and you guys have that job. You have that amazing skill set. And unfortunately, a lot of creative people don't really have that business mindset or confidence, because you're doing something that you love. So there's a tendency to be grateful for it. And that tendency to be grateful because you love what you're doing, because you love creating, and you're creating a little bit of you, can really hinder a business mindset, can hinder negotiation skills, can hinder confidence and that kind of side of things as well. So I would recommend that you choose one or the other. I feel like doing a bit of both where you're actually trying to get work in for both sides, it doesn't really work in my books. There's a, you just have to, I don't think you can do them well enough. I think it's something you could maybe do for a year or two, but you wouldn't be earning enough money on either side to really make things work, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Lou. I think it's better just to focus on like one discipline and do a really good job of that and build up a reputation there. So one question is there a little black book list of bad recruiters or agencies we should know about? I don't know how you feel about answering that question.
I think we have to be really careful about this kind of vernacular and this kind of thought process, particularly in this moment where illustrators and creatives generally will be working by themselves normally. And then we have this compounded situation where we are very isolated now, particularly. So the social skills go out the window, your irritability goes up 10,000%, your inability to read through the lines of an email or read people correctly goes out the window because you're dealing with your own shit. And I think it's really easy, you're worried about the future. It's really easy to be negative in this moment. It's really easy to be like, fuck those guys, and get angry about something and be, these guys are the bad guys and that is really toxic to yourself, and it's toxic to other people. There's conversations that happen on Twitter, and there's stuff that happens. It ain't happening. It ain't helping anybody. And it also really compounds this mental health thing that we all, I'm sure, are, it's exacerbated by this situation. As creative people, we're all, the darkness is always there. She's lovely to creep back into. I'm sure everyone's had good and bad days throughout this whole situation, probably more bad days than good. And I think it's really important that we stop ourselves from having these conversations that are negative, because they're just a downward spiral and they don't help anybody. The main thing is, who are the good guys, and who do you want to work for? Do your own personal research about who you want to work for, and aim high, aim to get those guys. Focus on getting new work into your portfolio as much as possible. Be prolific, get all the work in as much as possible. Make sure that you're having conversations with people that are positive conversations, and people will feed off that. But if you are ruminating about who are the bad guys and who are the good guys, and getting annoyed at people and then just maybe spouting stuff on Twitter or anything like that, I think it's really, really important to stay positive in this moment and make sure that you're projecting yourself positively. The main thing is focus on yourself, focus on getting the right work into your portfolio, and contacting the right people. There is loads of jokers out there. Of course there is, absolutely. And I think when you're dealing with jokers and that kind of stuff, I think illustrators tend to not go with their gut feeling. They tend to be like, shit, I need the money or whatever. So your initial interaction with someone can flare up red flags, and illustrators do tend to see the red flags and keep going. And being like, oh yeah, well, they were a bit weird at the beginning and then they didn't want to say anything about that. And I'm like, if they're a bit weird about saying anything in the beginning, or they don't want to give you a contract, or they're not pinning you down, or they're talking about shit money, the whole thing is going to be shit. It's going to be shit from the get-go. Like, I know instantaneously from one or two emails in with a client or an art director or whoever it is, exactly what their game plan is, what side of the fence I need to sit on, or how much I'm going to have to push this. So I think it's important to listen to your gut feeling when you are interacting with people. And if clients are being wishy-washy about stuff, it's up to you to be the driving force to pin them down and say, this is how it's going to go, And then, if you're still getting pushed back, and if you're still getting fucked around, or, not getting the right answers or whatever, then, you pick and choose who you deal with in your career or how that goes. So I think, having the willpower to say no to some people, or just saying, look, this project doesn't seem like it's worth it. These guys are going to seem like they're going to be more hassle than they're worth. And read your contracts, man. Read your goddamn contracts. And if you don't know how to read contracts, get in touch with the AOI. Please read your contracts before you start any work. Don't sign anything make sure everything that you need in there is in the contract at the beginning, because, you know, a lot of people get annoyed about the bad guys afterwards, when bad guys aren't bad guys, they're just businesses. And every business agreement, you know, is going to be orientated around money and business and them getting what they need from you. Doesn't make them bad guys. That's just how business works. So it's up to you as a business yourself to make sure that you're negotiating your contract properly and that all of that stuff, rather than being like, those guys fucked me over. Well, you didn't read your contract or negotiate it. So whose fault is that? You know, these, you know, so you have to take a look at yourself a little bit more. And I think that's something illustrators, loads of the people that I was speaking to, portfolios I've seen in the last 3-4 weeks, loads of people not even using contracts at all, because they don't like the confrontation. You shouldn't be in business, and you won't be in business very long if you're not into negotiating your terms and that kind of thing. I mean, that's all I'm doing all day in and out, and that's what you guys should be doing as well. So that's how you don't get fucked over.
Very well answered there, Lou. Because also I'm very mindful, like I don't like to say anything negative about or anything like that anyway. And you know who the good guys are out there, because you'll hear your friends raving about them, or people that have had positive experiences with them, etc. But let's move on to any advice for illustration students graduating this summer. Our degree shows have been cancelled and it seems very daunting, I know.
No, I feel for you guys, man. I feel for you guys. I miss going around all the students and all the colleges. I love it. Just love seeing all that new work. So I heard about this thing. I can't remember what it is, but there's some company is giving up like thousands and thousands and thousands of the advertising space.
On Twitter, I think yesterday. I think I saw you share it first.
So can you remember who it is?
Not off the top of my head.
It's on my Twitter feed. My Twitter is I am Lou Bones. But they are working with loads of universities to digitally advertise the space, or give up their digital advertising space and other advertising space to the creatives, because they won't, to graduates with their grad shows, because they won't get it in front of people. I mean, your grad show, your tutors will put a lot of weight on your grad show, like they put weight on your results for your A-levels and all the rest of it. But I think having your own, it's more important now to be doing the research and using this time to research, like we were talking about earlier on, getting those ad agencies, figuring out who art directors are, and also just getting in the habit of that, because that will be something that you'll need forever and ever and ever. I think there's a tendency to be like, fuck, that was so hard when you finish uni and you just finish it and then you're like, thank God that's over, and you go sleep for the whole summer. And I think this is the moment to make sure that you do not drop the ball. Make sure that now you're released from the constraints of university work. Now you can really focus on getting stuff into your portfolio that is exactly what you want to do, without the, back and forth of a tutor or the pushback from a client. Figure out who those clients that you want to work with are, figure out what those dream projects are, get that stuff in your portfolio as quickly as possible, and then get it out. I think you also, you have a little saving grace at this moment, because a lot of things are on hold in terms of new business. But, we will come out of it in 2 or 3 months. And this is a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. So please don't lose faith. Everything will roll back in, and everything will roll back in. Everyone will have to make up for this time lost, for the money lost and all that stuff. So there's a moment where you can use the next 2 months to fucking get loads of new great stuff in your portfolio. Get the work that's out there out on your Instagram and that kind of thing. Again, it's just where that research side of it is going to come in a lot more handy for you. Grad shows, there's so much weight put on them, and I think it's maybe too much weight, and more weight should be really focused on getting you industry ready, like understanding about ad agencies, understanding about art directors, and how much research into contacts and making contacts and getting your work, the right work in your portfolio, rather than your grad show. But there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, I think researching and all those kind of contact side of things is where you need to be at. I'd definitely check out that thing as well. It looks really cool.
I do agree with you a lot there, Lou, about how when I've been at like D&AD New Blood and met loads of grads, I've just thought them just having a stand there has meant they're going to land a job in the industry straight away, and they're just not prepared. And I've actually reached out to a few universities, and I'm due to give some talks where I just prep these grads for entering the industry. And managing expectations is the number one thing as well, knowing that just because you've graduated and you've got all your finished work that you're going to land a job like, hey, here I am, like, hire me. It doesn't quite work like that. You have to be reaching out, making connections early on, and like you say, building your Instagram, your Twitter, like social media presence as well could really save you in this time if you have a grad show.
Yeah.
How are you doing for time, by the way?
I'm good. I'm absolutely happy to keep cracking on. Yeah.
Everyone's still here, so they seem to be enjoying it. So let's just keep going, shall we? Okay.
Could I just chime in as well? Just
yeah, sure.
Just because I just saw the other day, and this is really handy, and if you guys might find it helpful, and if you know anyone else that might find it helpful, please do direct them to it. But the AOI and the Association of Photographers and the Society of Authors, which is children's books authors and illustrators, have all come together, and they created this new resource on for mental health for creatives, particularly focused during this time. And it came out maybe 2 days ago. It's on the AOI website. It's open to all. You don't need to be a someone's put it in the group. Oh,
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's fucking great, because I read through it and it was really comprehensive and some really great tips there. So a really, really good one. So if you know anyone else that might need that in this moment, it's one of the reasons why I started saying I do the portfolio consultations and stuff, just because I know people can be isolated and then you're more isolated in this moment. So good one to have a look at. Yeah. Even if you think you're fine, it's a good one to have a look at.
Moving on to another question. So could you recommend any good resources to get a better understanding of licensing? Also, how does the illustration market in the US compare to the UK in terms of rates?
So really good question. Thank you. So definitely the AOI is just 100% the best place. It's the only place to really go and get that information from, in terms of understanding how to the aspects that come into licensing, getting away from really understanding when it comes to pricing, understanding that the fee is based on, you know, how many people are looking at it, how big the client is, you know, how big the illustration will be seen itself. So obviously covers are much more than interior illustrations. Something that's on a billboard is going to be more than something that's on, you know, a transportation shed or something. So I think understanding licensing should be a port of call. It's a huge risk to your business plan. There's a few things that I do around business plans and that kind of thing. And understanding your risks, your financial risks to your business, the longevity of your business and the financial success of your business, and not understanding how to price and license it yourself would be a huge one up there. So really, really important to get down. Definitely the AOI has so many resources to make you understand. You can call them and have conversations with them. They do loads of events and that kind of stuff where they will walk you through what are the kind of basics to understand how you price and license things. The fees for America, obviously we've got our office now for over a year in the States, which has been a huge thing for us. The money in America is better. Let's not go into why. But your rights and that kind of stuff, you're more likely to get asked for a copyright assignment. You're more asked to get to be asked to work for hire. So work for hire is basically a copyright assignment. Moral rights waiver is usually kind of done on a day fee or just a lump sum. It would be a lot less than if you were licensing your work. Usually we're, you know, kind of came from a design side of things rather than an illustration side of things. Work for hire doesn't exist in the UK. It's not a legal term in the UK or in Europe. It's just a US thing. It is there. It's something that we, as an agency, really, you know, we're really about illustrators' rights, and we would never usually give up someone's rights. But the more we work in the States, the more you do kind of get asked to do that thing. And that's where you have to understand that you should try and be getting more money. If you do need to compensate rights, you should be compensating rights for more money. So, you know, if it does have to go down that way, then, you know, make sure that you're getting paid correctly for it. But in terms of learning and in terms of feeling more confident, just go to the AOI. They are absolutely fantastic. Loads of written resources. And if you don't understand the written resources, just ring them. You can have proper conversations. They have loads of events. They have loads of online events at the moment. They have an events page with loads of different stuff on it. I think it's nice to be able to bash ideas around with other illustrators. I just be cautious about that because you're all in the same boat. There's some nice stuff happening on Twitter and that as well. Well, I always say that you need to go in high with the idea, with the negotiation left open and positively left open, so that if it needs to come down, it can come down. Or if you kind of know that they don't have enough money or whatever, you can kind of say, well, I can't do that, but I can do this, and compromise and kind of work away like that. But I think understanding licensing, it's all about how big the company is, where they're going to use it, how long they're going to use it, and exactly what they're going to use it on. And I think keeping your licenses as tight as possible, prevent them using it elsewhere or reading between the lines. Like if you say something online, what exactly does the phrase online mean? That's something that we face all the time at Jelly. So online could be online advertising. It could be just their website. It could be just their Instagram. It could be paid advertising online. It could be paid social media posts. Paid social media campaigns are huge now. They're huge money because they get seen by millions of people, you know, for brands that come up in your Instagram stories and that kind of stuff. It's really important that you keep the vagueness out of it. If you're doing licensing for, you know, an editorial piece, make sure that you keep that, the name of the actual magazine, the specific name of the magazine in your license, so that the whole conglomerate of magazine can't use it, and that kind of thing as well. But again, a whole other topic.
Yeah, loads of really good information there. So another question, how can I be visible to art directors on Instagram? Are there any hashtags I should use?
I wouldn't say there's particularly hashtags that you can use. Again, it's all about the research. I think, you know, research and following those people. So, you know, find the agencies, follow the agencies, and then, you know, use LinkedIn to find people's names, art directors' names, then follow them on Instagram. See who other people are following. Look at, you know, other projects that you really love. Find out who the art director for those projects was. Easier to do than you think. It's all about research. I'm sorry, it's not as easy as just adding a hashtag.
Yeah, they're tricky things, these hashtags, to work out how to use them. So here's quite an interesting question. So I'm an illustrator and I found an Instagram account that had taken my illustrations and used them as their own designs, but in her style. She recently got a huge project from a big client. What do I do?
So there's no copyright in a style or an idea. So I've been faced with this question before, and when I've seen the two images in question, they are not what you think has not happened. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very, very clear about copyright infringement. Mm-hmm. And the same ideas cropping up again and again, because it's very easy, and there's so much generic stuff out there, and I don't mean that insultingly, but there's a lot of the same stuff out there. People come to the same conclusions all the time. Creative people, you've all gone to the same colleges, you've all been taught the same people way. It is, you know, those things do happen. if she's actually ripped off your work and it's kind of like you can lay them over each other and there's bits, copyright exists in part or whole. So if they've actually copied key lines from you or whatever, then you may have a stronger case. I would send it over to the AOI, join the AOI and send it over to them, send them side-by-side images of what it is. I think you have to be, I wouldn't be able to comment unless I actually saw what they were. But I think you need to be very, very careful. It's very easy for illustrators to kind of say, well, that's my idea or that's my concept. And there isn't any copyright in a concept or an idea or a style. If there's written text in there or there's key lines that have been copied, you know, or if it's a whole body of work that person has definitely replicated, but they're in their style, if you can literally link images directly together. But again, I've seen many, many illustrators come to me with, this person stolen my work or stolen a whole body of work. And if you put the images beside, it's not what that is not is what's happened, or it's so loose that there wouldn't be any legal basis to get anything done. And I know it can be really frustrating. And I know, again, you can get really hung up on it. And I think, like I was talking about that earlier on, look, if they have infringed your copyright, absolutely go hell for leather. Get the AOI involved. Like, you know, this is a good time for copyright. This is a good time for rights. And, you know, it can usually be quite easily dealt with, even just with one email. You don't need to go to court or anything like that. Just one strongly worded email can get, you know, we're faced with it at Jelly all the time. I think making sure that your work isn't generic and doesn't contain too many generic things will also limit the amount that your work can be copied. If you've got a really aesthetic niche, if you've got a real distinctive style, if you're doing something no one else, it's really difficult for people to replicate it. Whereas if your work is more, it's easier for people to rip off like children's book stuff, things that are a bit more generic, things that are more greetings card side of things, just tend to be a bit simpler, tend to be a bit kind of across the board, phrases and that kind of stuff. You know, people say the same stuff all the time and it's not copywritten. So just be careful about what you think it is. And definitely get the AOI, throw them over images side by side, obviously join them. And they should be able to help you out very, very quickly. They'll be able to decipher whether it's a legal thing or something else. And, you know, if it's your style is an issue that may cause you to consistently get people copying you, that's a conversation they will be able to have with you as well about how to get out of that and protect yourself a bit better.
Yeah. And someone shared the link here for the degree show, so thank you for that.
Oh, sweet, thanks guys.
So a few more questions we've got here. Should new freelance illustrators start thinking about long-term savings and pension schemes, etc.? Yeah,
I mean, I think the first maybe 1 or 2 years, if you're still scraping by and you've got like maybe you know, your I say 1 or 2 years, I know they can last a lot longer for people, but you know, if you've still got a part-time job and then doing your illustration stuff on the side and that kind of thing, and maybe not earning a huge amount of money from illustration just yet, you know, maybe just leave it. But if you are making like, you know, a reasonable living from illustration, yeah, definitely need to also, you need to really think about yourself as a business. And I think recent grads and that kind of stuff still aren't really thinking about themselves as a business. They're not really thinking about, they're just taking the jobs that come rather than thinking about, you know, the longevity, your 3-year plan, your 5-year plan. How much money do I really need to earn this year? How much money do I want to earn this year? What is it going to take to get to that amount? What do I need to change? And I think, you know, there's a certain point as well when you do start earning that, it may be better for you to become a limited liability company so that you just get money in and pay yourself a wage and put everything else aside. But definitely be thinking about pensions. I just think, you know, my mom was always kind of like, from I was 21, she was like, you need to be paying into a pension straight away. Aviva is what I would use. There's a few others out there, but Aviva's got a really nice kind of personal one that kind of small business owners and that kind of thing, and you try and pay into it, at least 5%, if not a good bit more than that. I think maybe 10% if you can. That would be amazing. Like most employed people would be paying like maybe, I think 3 is the minimum, and then the employer has to match that. So do think about it for sure. There is a whole resource on the AOI about business plans. You can have business consultations and stuff through the AOI as well, where they'll really go into detail about those kind of financial side of things. I would definitely be thinking about accounting. I would definitely be thinking about I think accounting is is definitely maybe more important than the pension just straight away for illustrators. I think as well, as you come into the industry, you can get really big. Some people get really big straight out of uni. And I know a couple of really big illustrators that are huge now who just didn't do the accounting thing at the beginning and just kind of fucked around for a while. And I'm sure there's loads of illustrators who still aren't really doing their accounts or, paying taxes properly or whatever. And when they got really big, then the tax man came and fucked them right up and financially fucked them, that they were way back where they started, even though they'd come so far and they were so big and they were getting the money in, but then they just had to pay taxes on all those, really a proper fine. So I think getting your head in that kind of side of things is really important. You are a business. You need to protect yourself financially from being sick or things like Corona. You don't get paid for any of that stuff. So I think getting yourself on board, also just getting your head into I'm a business. What do businesses have? They have protection here. They have money, set resources, and get yourself an accounting app, so you can see the ins and outs of your money properly. So you can see your expenses and that kind of stuff. Huge resources on the AOI, again, in person and written on all of those things.
Okay, so I think, should we wrap this up at 1:30?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, thank you so much.
No worries.
There's some amazing information there that you delivered. So this talk has been recorded, so I'm gonna kind of go through it, edit it, and then get it online. So is there anything else you'd like to add at all, Lou? Are you still running kind of crits at all, or?
So I am. I just kind of put it out, like, obviously, not all day, every day, but I'm trying to see a few illustrators a week, and do some illustrators who are at that moment in their career where they're good, they're solid, they're sorted, but a conversation might be able to push them up to the next level quickly, or be able to use this time to really push it into the next gear, and get through this bit. So I am, catch me on Twitter or that kind of thing. DM me on Twitter or something like that, or on Instagram, and I'll direct you where to go. I can't see everyone, obviously, just because of the time, but I just did want to put it out there for people who are, wanting to use this time where they may have a little, maybe there's less work coming in, but it's a moment. It is only a couple of months in the grand scheme of things, and great time to be stepping it up. And I think using your time like that makes you feel good, makes me feel good to see great work as well, and try and see as many people from the outside world as possible. So if you want a portfolio conversation, or if you're finding it really difficult at the moment in terms of your mental health or anything like that, and could just use a chat, just hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. I am Lou Bones on Twitter and Lou Bones on Instagram, and I'll direct you. Obviously, I can't see everyone, but I will try and get around to you. But yeah, really great questions as well, guys. Thank you so much. I hope you found it really helpful, and thank you so much, Nikki, for asking me to do it. Really, really nice thing to do for people at this moment.
No, you're welcome. And also, I think we discussed how we would both love to be able to help as many people as we can, but we're just, I'm just Nikki Lowell, you're Lou Bones, and we can't split ourselves amongst absolutely everyone. So this is why we've been putting on, this session in particular, and why I've been running more sessions, is to help as many creators in different disciplines get all the advice they need in this difficult time. So yeah, thank you all very much for tuning in. Feel free to tag us, tweet us, share us, and yeah, take care everyone.
Thanks so much, guys. Big love, keep safe.
Bye.